Susan was crying while folding their few clothes back into the bags when Ngozi came running from school at 2 p.m. Mommy, you won't believe what happened today. We had a quiz, and I got all the answers right, and the teacher said I was brilliant, and... She stopped, froze, saw the bags, saw her mother's tears, saw their small home being packed up again. No. Her voice was small, broken. No. Mommy, why are we leaving? Susan wiped her tears quickly, trying to smile, failing completely. I made a mistake, baby. I should have never believed the children. Their father found out, and he's very angry. We have to go. No, Ngozi's voice cracked. We can't go. This is our home. We have beds and hot water and walls. We can't go back to the shed. Please. We don't have a choice. Miss Susan! The triplets burst through the door like a SWAT team executing a raid. School bags still on their backs, uniforms still on. They'd clearly run from the car the moment it stopped. What happened? Kemi demanded, her eyes taking in the packed bags, Susan's tears, Ngozi's devastated face. Your father found out, Susan said quietly, her voice defeated. He's very angry. We have to leave. No! Karede's voice was firm, steel-like. You're not going anywhere. Yeah, Kahindi added, his face set in determination. That would have been impressive if he wasn't 9 years old. We hired you. You work for us. My dears, I can't stay where I'm not wanted. But we want you. Kemi was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. You're the only one who makes this house feel like home. You're the only one who cares about us. Please don't leave. Please. She threw her arms around Susan and held on like she was drowning, and Susan was the only life raft. Susan hugged her back, her heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces until there was nothing left but dust. I'm sorry, she whispered, crying into Kemi's hair. I'm so sorry, but your father doesn't want me here. And I won't cause problems in your family. He's the problem, Kahinda shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. Not you, him. Don't talk about your father like... Why not? Karede's voice was louder than anyone had ever heard it. It's true, he's the problem. He's been the problem for months, and we're tired of pretending he's not. The four children looked at each other. A silent conversation happened in seconds. A decision was made. Come on, Kemi said, grabbing her brother's hands. We're fixing this now. They marched into the main house like soldiers heading to war. Small soldiers, 9-year-old soldiers, but soldiers nonetheless. They found David in the living room, looking exhausted and angry and like he wanted to throw something. Daddy, Karede started, his voice deceptively calm. Don't daddy me, David's voice was sharp. How could you? How could you hire a stranger without telling me, without asking? Do you know how dangerous that is? She could have been anyone, a thief, a kidnapper. But she's not, Kemi shouted back, her voice matching his volume. She's a good person, the best person, and you're throwing her out because we didn't ask your permission? I'm your father. You should have asked. Why? Kahindi stepped forward, his face red with anger and tears. So you could say no from your sad room where you hide all day? David flinched like he'd been slapped. Watch your tone. No, Kahinda's voice got louder. You watch your tone. Do you know what it's been like living in this house? Do you? It's like living in a cemetery. Kemi's voice cracked. A big, expensive, dead cemetery where nobody talks and nobody laughs and nobody lives. David's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Mommy died, Kahinda's voice broke completely. And we're sad too. We're so sad. But we don't have time to be sad because you're too sad to take care of us. The words hit David like physical blows. We dress ourselves. Karede's voice was shaking now. We make our own breakfast. We do our own homework. We put ourselves to bed. because you won't even come out of your room. That's not fair. It is fair. Kemi was full on sobbing now. It's completely fair. We've been alone, Daddy, for 6 months. We lost Mommy and then we lost you. David felt something crack in his chest, something deep, something fundamental. And then Miss Susan came, Corradi continued, his voice quieter now but no less intense. And for the first time in months, this house felt like a home again. We had hot meals, clean clothes. Someone who actually asked how our day was. Someone who cared, Kahinda added. Someone who packed our lunches with little notes. Someone who braided Kemi's hair. Someone who helped with homework. Someone who made us feel like we mattered. Kemi wiped her tears, her voice steady despite the crying. You taught us to help people, Daddy. You taught us to be kind. You taught us that family isn't just blood, it's who shows up when you need them. She took a shaky breath. And now you want to throw out the woman who saved us, the woman who brought life back to this dead house, because we didn't ask your permission? The word hung in the air like an accusation. Permission. From a man who hadn't been present enough to give permission for anything. Corradi stepped forward, his face serious, his voice calm but firm. You know what, Daddy? You taught us another thing too. You taught us about integrity, about standing up for what's right, about not abandoning people who need you. He paused. So here's the deal. David blinked. What? Miss Susan stays or we leave. Silence, the kind of silence that comes right before an earthquake. What did you just say? David's voice was barely a whisper. We'll go to Grandma's house, Kemi said, her voice steady despite her tears. And we won't come back until we're 18. You'll never see us again. You can't. We can, Kehinde crossed his arms, looking more determined than a 9-year-old had any right to look. We're serious, Daddy. We're done. We're done being ignored. We're done being set. We're done living in this graveyard. So choose, Corradi said quietly. Miss Susan or us. You can't have both if you're going to treat her like garbage. David stared at his children, really stared at them. For the first time in 6 months, he actually saw them. When did they get so tall? When did the Corradi's voice get so mature? When did Kehinde's eyes get so serious? When did Kemi start standing like her mother, hands on hips, chin up, ready to fight the world? They look like warriors, small 9-year-old warriors in school uniforms, but warriors nonetheless. And suddenly, David saw himself through their eyes, a ghost in a wheelchair, a father who'd abandoned them emotionally while being physically present, a man who'd let grief consume him so completely that he'd forgotten his children were grieving too. He saw a year of missing breakfast, missing bedtime stories, missing conversations, missing life. He saw 3 children who'd been drowning while he was too busy drowning himself to notice. And he saw the truth in their words, sharp and cutting and undeniable. They were right about everything. You're right, he whispered. The triplets blinked, froze. Surely they'd misheard. What? Kemi asked, her voice small and uncertain. You're right about everything. David's voice broke, tears streaming down his face faster than he could wipe them. I've been a terrible father, the worst father. I've been so lost in my own pain that I didn't see yours. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His shoulders shook with sobs. Big, ugly, necessary sobs that had been building for 6 months. I miss her, he gasped between tears. I miss her so much. And I didn't know how to. We know, Daddy, Corradi whispered, tears streaming down his own face. We miss her too. The triplets ran to him, threw their arms around him, and they all cried together, 4 people who had been holding back oceans of grief, finally letting it pour out. They cried for Amara, for the accident, for the lost months, for the pain that had nearly destroyed them. They held each other for a long while time, so long that the sun started setting outside, painting the room in orange and gold. When the tears finally slowed, not stopped, but slowed to manageable levels, David wiped his face with shaking hands. "Where's Susan?" His voice was hoarse from crying. "Packing," Kemi sniffled, her face blotchy and red. "In the boys' quarters." "Go get her, please. I need to apologize." Susan came reluctantly, Ngozi holding her hand tight, both of them looking like they were walking to their execution. David looked at her, really looked at her this time, not as an intruder, not as a stranger who'd violated his home, but as a person, a woman who had been dealt a terrible hand and was playing it with dignity, a mother who'd do anything for her child, a human being who'd shown his children more care in 3 weeks than he'd shown them in 6 months. He saw the kindness in her eyes, even through her fear. He saw the strength in her posture, even through her tears. He saw the way she held her daughter protectively, like she'd take on the world with nothing but her bare hands if it meant keeping Ngozi safe. And he felt ashamed, deeply, profoundly ashamed. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked like broken glass. "I was wrong. I was scared and angry, and I took it out on you, and that was wrong." Susan said nothing, just watched him warily, like a deer deciding whether to run. "My children are right," David continued, fresh tears streaming down his face. "You've been helping them when I couldn't, taking care of them when I was too broken to do it myself. And instead of being grateful, I threatened you, I yelled at you, I treated you like, he couldn't finish. "Like garbage," Susan finished quietly. David flinched. "Yes, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He took a shaky breath. Would you consider staying, please?" Susan glanced at the triplets, who were giving her matching puppy dog eyes that could have melted steel. "I'll pay you properly," David continued, words tumbling out faster now. 200,000 naira a month, plus accommodation and all meals, obviously. And Ngozi, he looked at the little girl who was trying very hard not to cry. "We'll enroll you in Greenwood Academy, with my children. Same school, same opportunities, same everything." Ngozi's eyes went so wide they looked like they might fall out of her head and roll across the floor. "The school fees alone are 800,000 naira per term," David continued. "I'll cover it, all of it, uniforms, books, everything. You'll have the same education as my children because you are one of my children now, if you'll give me a chance to..." He trailed off, unable to continue through the emotion choking his throat. Susan stared at him, at this broken man who was trying, desperately, messily trying to do better. At the triplets, who were practically vibrating with hope. At her daughter, whose face was lit up like someone had just told her Christmas was coming early and bringing presents. She looked at the boys' quarters, her home now, the first real home she had had in months. She thought about sleeping on cardboard, about cold baths and public toilets, about watching Ngozi pretend she wasn't hungry. She thought about hot water and clean sheets and children who'd become family. And she thought about second chances, about grace, about how sometimes the best things in life come from the worst circumstances. "Okay," she whispered, and fresh tears streamed down her face. Happy tears this time. "We'll stay." The triplets cheered, actually screamed with joy, so loud that Max the dog came running, barking excitedly even though he had no idea what was happening, but was happy to participate in the celebration. Ngozi jumped up and down, shrieking, "We're staying, Mommy, we're staying. I'm going to Greenwood Academy. I'm going to be rich, people, smart." The children dog-piled into a group hug, all 5 of them, yes, 5, because David wheeled himself over and joined in, his arms around as many children as he could reach. They laughed and cried and held each other like they were the only people in the world who mattered, which to each other, they were. Susan stood there watching them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. David looked up at her from the middle of the child pile. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not giving up on us, for seeing us when we couldn't see ourselves, for everything." Susan smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches your eyes and lights up your whole face. "You're welcome, sir." "David," he corrected. "Just David. We're family now. Family doesn't do sir." "David," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt right. That night, Susan made a feast. Jollof rice so good it could win awards. Fried plantains so perfect it was basically edible gold. Grilled chicken so tender it fell off the bone. Moi moi that was fluffy and flavorful. Salad that was fresh and crisp. They all ate together at the big dining table, the table that hadn't been used for family dinner in 6 months. David, Susan, the triplets, Ngozi, 7 people, 1 family, mismatched, unconventional, born from tragedy and desperation, but family nonetheless. They talked, they laughed, they told stories. Kehinde made terrible jokes that nobody laughed at, but everybody smiled through. Kemi told them about the mean girl at school who'd learned not to mess with her. Korede explained his latest science project with so much enthusiasm that everyone pretended to understand. Ngozi described her first day at public school with such dramatic flair that it sounded like an action movie. David listened, really listened, and for the first time in 6 months, he felt present. Not just physically there, but there, engaged, connected, alive. After dinner, the children went to bed, all 4 of them going upstairs together, arguing about who had to shower first and whose turn it was to pick the bedtime story. Normal kid stuff, beautiful, chaotic, normal kid stuff. David and Susan cleaned up the kitchen together in comfortable silence. "I meant what I said earlier," David said quietly, drying a plate. "Thank you. You saved us." "You saved yourselves," Susan corrected gently. "I just helped a little." "You did more than help," he paused. "The children said you lost your husband. I'm sorry. That must have been terrible," Susan finished. "The hardest thing I've ever been through. He was a good man, kind funny. He made the best pancakes." David smiled sadly. "Amara made terrible pancakes, burnt every time. But she tried, and we ate them anyway because we loved her." They stood in silence for a moment, 2 people who'd lost their partners, 2 people who understood grief in a way only grievers can. "How did you survive?" David asked quietly. "How did you keep going?" "Ngozi," Susan said simply, "I had to. If I fell apart, she'd have no one." She looked at him. "You have 3 someones. They need you. Not the broken version hiding in guilt. The real you. The father who loves them." David's throat tightened. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Susan said firmly. "You just did. You came downstairs. You talked to them. You ate with them. That's progress." "It doesn't feel like enough." "Progress never does, but it's something, and something is better than nothing." She smiled at him, a warm, encouraging smile that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could do this. "Start small," she continued. "Have breakfast with them tomorrow. Ask about their day. Laugh at Kehinde's terrible jokes, even though they're really terrible." David laughed, a small laugh, rusty from disuse, but real. "All of his jokes are terrible." "Exactly, but you laugh anyway because that's what fathers do." The change didn't happen overnight. Life isn't a movie where everything gets fixed with one conversation and a heartfelt hug. But it started, and starting is half the battle. The next morning, David came downstairs for breakfast. Actually came downstairs. Left his room, joined the living. The triplets nearly fell out of their chairs. "Daddy," Kemi's voice was shocked. You're here, at breakfast, in the morning, in real life." "Was this a dream?" Kehinde whispered to Korede. "Pinch me." Korede pinched him. "Ow, I didn't mean that hard." You said pinch you. I meant gentle pinch, love pinch, not attack pinch. David smiled. A small, tentative smile, but real. Good morning, he said, his voice quiet but there. Good morning, Daddy, they chorused, their faces lighting up like someone had turned on the sun. Susan set a plate in front of him, scrambled eggs, toast, sausages, fruit. Thank you, Susan. You're welcome, David. The use of his first name, no sir, no distance, felt significant, like they were equals, like they were family. At first, breakfast was awkward. David didn't know what to say. The children didn't know if they were allowed to be normal. Everyone was too polite, too careful, like they were walking on eggshells made of more eggshells. But Susan, bless her heart, was having none of it. Karate, tell your father about your science project. Oh, well, I'm building a volcano that actually erupts using baking soda and vinegar, and that's wonderful, David said, and he meant it. Can I see it when you're done? Kurata's face lit up. Really? Really? And just like that, the ice broke. Conversation flowed. Kehinde told a terrible joke about a chicken crossing the road. David laughed, actually laughed. Kemi told them about the spelling bee she'd won. David hugged her. I'm proud of you. Kemi cried, happy tears, the kind that heal. Ngozi, still shy around David, quietly mentioned she had a math test. You'll do great, David said gently. You're brilliant, just like these troublemakers. Hey, the triplets protested. We're not troublemakers, Kehinde said indignantly. We're creatively spontaneous. You set off the smoke alarm making popcorn. That was one time. It was 3 times. Okay, fine. Multiple times, but we learned from our mistake. Everyone laughed, even David, especially David, and it felt good. After breakfast, David kissed each child goodbye before school. Actually kissed them on the forehead, like a father. The triplets looked like they might cry again. Have a good day, he said. Learn lots. Be kind. Don't set anything on fire. That was 1 time, Kehinde protested again. 3 times. Stop counting. Susan became more than a housekeeper. She became a drill sergeant, a life coach, a therapist without a license. Mr. David, you'd say, and yes, she went back to Mr. David during work hours because some formality was appropriate. When last did you shower? David blinked. Yesterday. That's a lie. You smell like sadness and bad decisions. Go shower now with soap, real soap, not just standing underwater and calling it clean. Excuse me? You heard me. Shower, shave, put on clean clothes. You're not dead, Mr. David. Stop acting like you are. It was the first time anyone had spoken to him like that since the accident. Blunt, direct, no tiptoeing, no pity. Just truth delivered with the force of a slap. And honestly, it was exactly what he needed. She convinced him to see a therapist. Therapy isn't weakness, she said firmly, hands on her hips in that way that meant she would not be argued with. It's strength. It takes courage to admit you need help. I don't need Mr. David. She gave him the look, the universal mother look that transcends cultures and languages. With all due respect, you've been wearing the same pajamas for 3 days. You need help. He looked down at his clothes. She was right. Damn. Fine, he mumbled. I'll call someone. Today. Today? Today. I'll dial the number if you want. I'll even talk to them if you're too scared. But you're making that appointment today. She was terrifying. He called. The therapist's name was Dr. Adeyemi, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, silver-streaked hair pulled into a bun, and zero tolerance for nonsense. She reminded David of his mother, which was both comforting and terrifying. Tell me about Amara, she said during their first session. her voice gentle but firm. David's eyes filled with tears immediately, like someone had turned on a faucet connected directly to his grief. "Take your time," Dr. Adeyemi said, pushing a box of tissues across her desk, and slowly, painfully, like pulling teeth from his own mouth. David talked. He talked about how they met in university, both of them studying business, both of them ambitious, both of them laughing at a professor's terrible joke and catching each other's eyes across the lecture hall. How she could make a room feel bright just by walking into it, like she carried sunshine in her pockets. How she laughed at all his jokes, even the terrible ones, especially the terrible ones. How she danced in the kitchen while cooking, singing off-key but not caring. How she'd kiss the children goodnight and tell them stories about brave princesses and clever boys and magic that was real if you believed hard enough. How she'd been his partner in every sense of the word. Business, life, parenting, everything. And then he talked about the accident, about the guilt that ate him alive every single day. "It was my fault," he sobbed, his whole body shaking. "I was driving. I'd been drinking. If I'd just given the keys to the valet, if I'd just called a driver, if I'd just listened to her." "Stop," Dr. Adeyemi said gently but firmly. "You didn't kill her." "But no buts. Listen to me carefully, Mr. Craig. A reckless driver who ran a red light killed your wife. A tragic accident killed your wife. You didn't kill her. You're a victim too." "But I was drinking." "You had a few glasses of champagne at a work event. You weren't drunk. The police report said you passed the breathalyzer. The other driver was at fault. The other driver ran the light. Not you. But are you God?" Dr. Adeyemi interrupted. David blinked. "What? Are you God? All-knowing? All-powerful? Could you have possibly known that a reckless driver would run a red light at that exact moment?" "No, but then it's not your fault. It's a tragedy, a horrible, painful, life-destroying tragedy, but it's not your fault." The words hit him like a hammer. Not your fault. He'd been carrying guilt for 6 months like a boulder on his back. And here was this woman, this stranger, telling him to put it down. "But if I just..." "Stop," Dr. Adeyemi said again. "We can if only ourselves to death, Mr. Craig. If only you'd left 5 minutes earlier. If only you'd taken a different route. If only you'd never gone to the gala. If only, if only, if only." She leaned forward. "But life doesn't work that way. We can't control everything. We can't predict every danger. We can only do our best and hope it's enough." David stared at her, tears streaming down his face. "Your wife died," Dr. Adeyemi continued, her voice softer now. "And that's a tragedy, the worst kind. But you survived, and now you get to choose. Do you want to survive or do you want to live?" David's throat felt tight. "What's the difference?" "Surviving is breathing, eating, existing. It's what you've been doing for 6 months." She paused. "Living is feeling, laughing, connecting, being present for your children. It's what you did this morning at breakfast." David thought about that morning, about Kurede's excited face, about Kehinde's terrible joke, about Kemi's hug, about feeling there for the first time in months. "Your wife is gone," Dr. Adeyemi said gently, "and that's a tragedy that will always hurt. But your children are still here. They need you, not the broken version hiding in guilt. The real you, the father who loves them." Something in David's chest loosened, just a little, but enough. "I don't know if I can," he whispered. "You already are," Dr. Adeyemi said, smiling. "You came here, you're talking, you went downstairs for breakfast. That's progress. It doesn't feel like enough. Progress never does, but it's something, and something is always better than nothing." Physical therapy was harder, so much harder. David's legs had atrophied from months of disuse, muscles turning to mush, bones weak, nerves damaged. The pain was excruciating, like someone was taking his legs apart and putting them back together wrong while he was still awake. "I can't," he gasped during one session, sweat pouring down his face like he'd just run a marathon. "I can't, it hurts too much." "Yes, you can," Susan said firmly. She'd started accompanying him to physical therapy appointments because apparently she'd appointed herself his personal cheerleader/drill sergeant. "Susan, it hurts. Push through it." Her voice was loud, commanding. "You think your children gave up when life got hard? No, they figured it out. They survived. So you figure it out." The physical therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Nurse Joy, who looked like she could bench press a car, nodded approvingly. "Listen to her, Mr. Craig. Push." David pushed. His legs shook. His muscles screamed. His whole body felt like it was on fire. But he took one step, then another, then another. "That's it," Susan shouted, clapping her hands. "That's my boss. Look at you, walking like a champion." "I'm taking 3 steps. 3 steps more than yesterday. That's progress. That's growth. That's okay, I get it." But David was smiling, actually smiling. Because she was right, 3 steps was more than yesterday, and tomorrow maybe he'd take 4. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Something neither of them planned. Something that crept up quietly like sunrise, gradual, inevitable, beautiful. David and Susan became friends, real friends, not just employer-employee, not just 2 people sharing a space, but actual friends who understood each other in ways that only people who'd survived similar tragedies could. It started with small conversations in the kitchen while she cooked. David would wheel himself in, or later limp in with his cane because progress, and just sit, watch, talk. "What are you making?" he'd ask. "A goosey soup. Your children requested it." Specifically, Kehinde requested it, very specifically. He wrote me a note that said, "Miss Susan, if you make a goosey soup, I will love you forever, but if you don't, I'll only love you for a regular amount of time." David laughed, actually laughed. That sounds exactly like something he'd say. He's hilarious, terrible sense of humor, but hilarious. He gets it from his mother. Amara had the worst jokes, absolutely terrible. We'd all groan and she'd laugh at her own punchlines. Susan smiled, stirring the pot. "She sounds wonderful." She was. His voice went soft. "She really was. You would have liked her." "I'm sure I would have." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only happens between people who don't need to fill every moment with words. "You have good taste in children," Susan said eventually. "They're wonderful kids, smart, kind, funny. You raised them well." "Amara raised them well," David corrected quietly. "I just tried not to mess it up too badly." "You did more than try. Children don't become that compassionate by accident. That comes from being taught, from being shown, from having parents who model kindness." She looked at him directly. "You're a good father, David. You had a breakdown, a completely understandable breakdown after a tragedy, but that doesn't erase all the years you were there, the foundation you built, the love you gave." David's eyes got misty. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." These small exchanges became longer conversations about life, about loss, about hope that felt impossible but maybe wasn't, about the small moments that made life worth living, the way children laugh when they think adults aren't listening, the smell of rain on hot pavement, the satisfaction of a perfectly cooked meal, about grief and how it changes shape but never fully disappears. Susan told him more about James, her late husband, how he died of malaria because they couldn't afford the expensive hospital with the good doctors, how she'd watched him slip away in a public hospital with overworked nurses and not enough medicine. I held his hand, she said quietly one evening, her voice distant with memory, and I felt the exact moment he left. It was like the lights went out. He was there and then he wasn't. Her hands trembled slightly. That helplessness, watching someone you love being unable to do anything, it breaks something inside you, changes you, forever. David understood with every fiber of his being. How did you survive it? His voice was gentle, genuinely curious. How did you keep going when everything fell apart? Ngozi. Susan's answer was simple, immediate, absolute. I had to. If I fell apart, she'd have no one. So I got up every day, put one foot in front of the other. Some days that's all you can do. Just keep moving, keep breathing, keep trying. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain, but refused to become bitter. You have a choice now, David. You can stay in that grief forever. Let it swallow you whole, consume you, destroy you. Or you can choose to live, not forget, never forget, but live for yourself, for your children, for the memory of the person you lost. I feel like I'm betraying her, David admitted, his voice cracking. By moving on, by being happy again, by laughing when she can't laugh anymore, by living when she's dead. Do you think she'd want you to be miserable forever? No, but then you're not betraying her. You're honoring her by living the life she'd want for you, by being the father she'd want you to be, by finding out even in the darkness. Susan's voice was firm but kind. Amara loved you, yes? Yes. And she loved those children? More than anything. Then living, truly living, being present, finding happiness again, that's not betrayal. That's love. That's keeping her memory alive by being the person she fell in love with, the person she'd be proud of. David's throat tightened with emotion so thick he could barely breathe. I don't know how, he whispered. Start small, Susan said, and her voice was so gentle it made his heart hurt. Have breakfast with your kids. Ask about their day. Laugh at their jokes, even Kehinde's terrible ones. All of Kehinde's jokes are terrible. That boy thinks puns are the height of comedy. Exactly, Susan laughed. That beautiful, warm laugh. But you laugh anyway, because that's what fathers do. You show up, you listen, you care, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. They became each other's support system. When David had bad days, days when the grief felt like it would swallow him whole, when getting out of bed felt impossible, when breathing hurt, Susan would sit with him, not saying anything profound, not offering empty platitudes, just present. A quiet, steady presence that said, "You're not alone. I see you. I understand." One particularly bad evening, David broke down completely. I can't do this, he sobbed, his face in his hands. I can't be the father they need. I'm too broken, too damaged, too... Stop, Susan said firmly, grabbing his hands and pulling them away from his face so he had to look at her. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. I don't feel like I'm healing. Healing doesn't feel like anything except hard. It's messy and painful, and some days you take 10 steps backward. But you're doing it. You came downstairs today. You ate breakfast with your children. You laughed at Kehinde's terrible joke about the chicken. That's healing. That's not enough. It's plenty. Her voice was loud now, passionate. Stop measuring yourself against some perfect version that doesn't exist. You're doing your best, and your best is enough. David stared at her, at this woman who'd lost everything, who'd slept on cardboard, who'd survived horrors he couldn't imagine, telling him that he was enough. "How are you so strong?" he whispered. "I'm not strong," Susan said, and for the first time her voice cracked. "I'm terrified every single day. I'm terrified that this will all fall apart, that you'll realize you made a mistake hiring me, that Ngozi and I will end up back on the streets, that I'll fail her the way I failed James by not being able to afford proper medical care." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm not strong, David. I'm just stubborn. I refuse to give up. I refuse to let life win. I refuse to let tragedy be the end of my story." She wiped her tears angrily, like she was mad at them for existing. "So no, I'm not strong. I'm just a woman who refuses to quit. And you can be that too. You can refuse to let grief destroy you. You can refuse to abandon your children. You can refuse to give up." David reached out and grabbed her hand, just held it. Two broken people holding each other's hands, refusing to drown. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not giving up on me, on us. Thank you for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to." They sat there for a long time, hands clasped, tears drying, hope slowly starting to bloom. Meanwhile, the four children were thriving in ways that made adults feel both proud and slightly concerned. Ngozi had officially enrolled in Greenwood Academy, and the transformation was remarkable. The first day she wore that uniform, crisp white shirt, navy blue skirt, the school crest embroidered on the pocket, she cried. Full-on sobbed, standing in front of the mirror in the boys' quarters, staring at herself like she was looking at a stranger. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice shaking, "I look like a rich person." Susan, already crying because her daughter was crying, hugged her tight. "You look like a student, baby. A brilliant, beautiful student who deserves every opportunity." "But what if I'm not smart enough? What if the other kids laugh at me? What if they know I used to sleep on cardboard?" "Then they're foolish," Kami said, appearing in the doorway with the triplets behind her. "Because where you came from doesn't matter. What matters is where you're going, and you're going to Greenwood Academy to be brilliant. And if anyone gives you trouble," Kahinda added, cracking his knuckles like a tiny gangster, "you tell us. We'll handle it." "We don't condone violence," Karedi said quickly, adjusting his glasses. "We condone strategic confrontation," Kahinda corrected. "That's the same thing." "No, it's different. Strategic confrontation uses words, very mean words, words that make bullies cry and reconsider their life choices." Ngozi laughed through her tears. "You guys are crazy." "We're protective," Kemi corrected. "There's a difference. Now come on. First day, let's make it legendary." Greenwood Academy was a lot. The building looked like a palace, the grounds looked like a resort. The other students looked like they'd walked out of a fancy magazine. Ngozi felt like an imposter, like someone would figure out she didn't belong and kick her out. But then the triplets flanked her. Karede on one side, Kahinde on the other, Kemi slightly ahead like a tiny bodyguard. "Chin up," Kemi whispered. "Shoulders back. You're a Craig now. Craigs don't do intimidation." "I'm not a Craig," Ngozi whispered back. "My last name is Okafor. Details, your family, that makes you a Craig in spirit. Now walk like you own this place." Ngozi straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked into Greenwood Academy like she belonged there. Because she did. The first week was rough. Some kids were nice, some were curious, some were less kind. There was one girl in particular, Zainab, daughter of a senator, professional mean girl, future villain in training. She took one look at Ngozi and knew. Mean girls always know. They can smell vulnerability like sharks smell blood. "Where did you come from?" Zainab asked during break, her voice dripping with fake sweetness that was actually poison. I'm new," Ngozi said quietly. "Obviously, I've never seen you before. And trust me, I know everyone who matters at this school." Her friends giggled. That awful fake giggle that means we're laughing with her, not with you. "Your uniform looks new," Zainab continued, circling Ngozi like a predator. Like really new. Like you just got it. Like maybe you couldn't afford Greenwood before. Ngozi's face went red. Leave her alone. Kemi appeared like an angel of vengeance. A tiny 9-year-old angel of vengeance with braids and attitude. Excuse me? Zainab turned, eyebrow raised. Who are you? I'm Kema Craig, and that's my sister. Your sister? Zainab looked between them. Ngozi, dark-skinned and nervous. Kemi, lighter-skinned and furious. She's not your sister. You don't even look alike. Family isn't about looks, you coconut, Kemi shot back, stepping closer. Family is about who shows up, who cares, who has your back. And Ngozi is my sister, which means if you mess with her, you mess with me. Ooh, I'm so scared, Zainab said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You should be, Kehinde said, appearing on Kemi's right. Because we're a package deal, Korede added, appearing on her left. The three of them stood there, 3 tiny bodyguards, united in fury. Zainab blinked, suddenly less confident, because one Craig was annoying. But 3 Craigs? 3 Craigs was a problem. Whatever, Zainab said, flipping her hair. She's not worth my time anyway. Come on, girls. She walked away, her posse following like baby ducks following a mean mother duck. Ngozi stared at the triplets, her eyes wide. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did, Kemi said firmly. Nobody messes with our sister. Nobody. But I'm not. You are, Korede interrupted. Your family. That's not up for debate. That's just fact. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. Happy tears, grateful tears. The kind that come when you realize you're not alone. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank us, Kehinde said, grinning. Just next time someone bothers you, don't be quiet, roast them, destroy them with words, make them regret their life choices. I don't know how to roast people. We'll teach you, Kemi said excitedly. Roasting 101, first lesson, find their weakness. Second lesson, exploit it verbally with style. This feels mean. It's not mean if they started it, Kehinde said philosophically. It's justice, verbal justice. The 4 of them became inseparable at school. A unit, a squad, a tiny army. They did homework together, all 4 of them sprawled in the Craig garden after school, books everywhere, arguing about everything. The answer is 42, Kehinde insisted. The answer is not 42, Korede shot back. That's from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is a math problem. Maybe the math problem is referencing Hitchhiker's Guide. That makes no sense. Your face makes no sense. That's not even a comeback. Meanwhile, Kemi and Ngozi worked on their English homework, ignoring the chaos. Boys are so loud, Ngozi observed. Tell me about it. I've lived with them my whole life. Sometimes I think they're allergic to indoor voices. I heard that, Kehinde shouted. Good, it was meant for you. They played football in intense matches that got competitive. Foul, Kehinde screamed. She tripped me. I did not trip you, Ngozi protested. You fell because you're clumsy. I'm not clumsy, you're just too aggressive. There's no such thing as too aggressive in football. Yes, there is. It's called a foul. Boys, Kemi blew an imaginary whistle. Stop crying and play. They raided the kitchen for midnight snacks together. Stealth missions that were not stealthy at all. Shh, Korede whispered as they tiptoed down the stairs at 11 p.m. I'm being quiet, Kehinde whisper shouted, which was not quiet. That's not quiet. It's quiet for me. They made it to the kitchen and started pulling out everything. Bread, Nutella, jam, cheese, leftover chicken, biscuits, juice, fruit. We're making sandwiches or a buffet, Ngozi asked, staring at the spread. Yes, Kemi said simply. They were caught by Susan, who appeared in the doorway looking tired but not surprised. You people will not kill me in this house, she sighed. Eat your snack and go to bed before I use broom to reset your brains. You're the best, Miss Susan, they chorused. I'm too soft, that's my problem. Now go before I change my mind and make you do push-ups. They scattered like roaches when the light comes on. At school, they had each other's backs. When a boy made fun of Korede's glasses, Ngozi accidentally spilled juice on his uniform. When someone tried to copy Kemi's homework, Kehinde told the teacher immediately, snitching is acceptable when protecting family. When Ngozi struggled with science, Korede tutored her every afternoon until she mastered it. When Kehinde got detention for talking in class, shocking, truly, they all waited for him after school because we leave together or not at all. They were a unit, unbreakable. The Four Musketeers, all for one and one for all, and also we share snacks. 2 years passed, 2 whole years, and everything had changed. David could walk now, not perfectly, still needed a cane for long distances, sometimes still needed crutches on bad days, but he could walk. He'd gone back to work, gradually at first, just a few hours a week, then more, then full-time. His business, which had been struggling during his absence, rebounded, actually thrived, because David wasn't just working anymore, he was living, present, focused, there. His employees noticed the difference. His business partners noticed. His children definitely noticed. The Craig mansion was alive again, not just not sad anymore, actually genuinely alive. Laughter echoed through the halls like it belonged there. The kitchen always smelled like Susan's cooking. Egusi soup, jollof rice, pounded yam, pepper soup, all the foods that make a house feel like home. The garden was full of children, the triplets, Ngozi, and sometimes their school friends, running around like tiny tornadoes of chaos. The living room had family movie nights every Friday. All 7 of them, David, Susan, the 4 kids, Mama Gloria when she visited, and Max the dog who was convinced he was people. The dining table hosted actual family dinners, where everyone talked and laughed and argued about everything from homework to politics to whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Kehinde said yes, everyone else said he was wrong. Even the chandelier looked happier, sparkling like it had remembered its purpose. And somewhere in those 2 years, David realized something terrifying. He had feelings for Susan. Romantic feelings. The kind that made his heart do stupid things like skip beats and race and generally act like it had forgotten how to function normally. It started small, tiny moments he tried to ignore. The way his chest felt warm when she laughed. The way he'd find excuses to be in the kitchen when she was cooking. The way her voice was the first thing he wanted to hear in the morning and the last thing before bed. The way she'd tuck her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. And he'd think, that's really cute. Wait, why am I thinking that? Stop thinking that. The way she'd scold him for not taking his physical therapy seriously, hands on her hips, eyes flashing, and he'd think, she's beautiful when she's angry. Wait, no, stop it, brain. The way she'd read to the children at bedtime, her voice soft and melodic, and he'd stand in the hallway just listening like a creep. He tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself it was just gratitude. She'd saved his family. Of course he felt warmly toward her. That was normal. That was appropriate. That was definitely not romantic feelings that could complicate everything. Except it was romantic feelings, and they were getting stronger. One evening, Susan was in the living room knitting. She'd picked up the hobby because knitting helps clear the mind and also gives me something to do with my hands besides stress-eat biscuits. She was humming softly to herself, completely absorbed in creating a scarf for Kemi. David found her there, bathed in the golden light of sunset streaming through the windows, and his heart did that stupid thing again, where it forgot how to beat normally. She looked peaceful, beautiful, like something out of a painting. Oh no, he thought. Oh no. This is bad. He tried to fight it, reminded himself that Susan was his employee, that getting involved would be inappropriate, that he was still grieving Amara. It had only been 2 years. That wasn't enough time, right? That he'd probably just ruin everything if he said something. But the heart doesn't listen to logic. The heart is stupid. The heart sees someone who makes you laugh and thinks, yes, that one. I want that one. He asked himself the hard questions. Are you ready to move on? He didn't know. Maybe? Possibly? Would Amara be angry? No, Amara would want him to be happy. She'd said as much once, years ago during a morbid what-if conversation. If something happens to me, don't you dare spend the rest of your life alone and miserable. Find someone who makes you happy. Live, David. Promise me. He'd promised. He just hadn't thought he'd have to keep that promise. What about the children? That was the big one. How would they feel about him dating their nanny? About potentially having a new mother figure become more than a mother figure? About replacing Amara? He wasn't replacing her. Nobody could replace her. But would the children understand that? He decided to ask them. One Saturday afternoon, while Susan and Ngozi were out shopping, David called an emergency family meeting. The triplets sat on the couch looking concerned. Are we in trouble? Kehinde asked immediately. No, why would you be in trouble? I don't know, but you have that serious face, the one you used when we set off the smoke alarm. That was one time. It was 5 times, and we're not talking about that right now, David interrupted. I need to ask you something important. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him. How would you feel about Susan being part of our family? Like, officially part of our family? Silence, dead silence. David's heart raced. Oh no, this was a mistake. They were going to be upset. They're going to think I'm betraying their mother. They're going to... Finally! Kemi jumped up, screaming. We've been waiting for you to figure it out. David blinked. What? Daddy, Kuredi said, grinning. We're not blind. We've seen how you look at her. How do I look at her? Like she's the best thing you've ever seen, Kehinde said. Like she's made of sunshine and happiness and really good jollof rice. And we've seen how she looks at you, Kemi added, bouncing on her toes. Like you're brave and strong and she's proud of you. And how you both act all weird and giggly around each other, Kuredi continued. We do not act giggly. Yes, you do, all 3 shouted. You laugh at her jokes that aren't even funny. You bring her tea without her asking. You do that thing where you smile when she enters the room. David felt his face go red. I do not do a thing. You do, Kehinde said. It's like your face lights up. It's disgusting. But also cute, Kemi added quickly. But mostly disgusting. But we approve, Kuredi said firmly. We've been hoping you'd ask her out. We saw how she helps you, how she reads to you when you have bad days, how you discuss books and life and everything, how she makes you laugh, real laughs, not fake ones. People have been asking us at school if Miss Susan is our new mom, Kemi said. And we've been saying yes because, honestly, she is. She does everything a mom does. She cares about us. She scolds us. She celebrates with us. She cries when we're hurt. That's a mom. David's eyes filled with tears. So you'd be okay with it? With me dating her? Dating, Kehinde scoffed. Daddy, we're not talking about dating. We're talking about marriage. Make her our mom for real. Marriage? I haven't even asked her out yet. Then you're behind schedule, Kemi said. Go ask her today. I can't just... Yes, you can, Kuredi said. Daddy, you deserve to be happy. And Miss Susan makes you happy. We see it. And honestly, we love her. We want her to be our mom. Officially. David couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. His heart was too full. These children, his children, giving him permission to be happy, encouraging him to move forward. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for understanding, for being so wise. When did you get so wise, Sim? We've always been wise, Kehinde said matter-of-factly. You just weren't paying attention because you were too sad. Fair point. David called his mother next. Mama Gloria answered on the second ring. David, is everything okay? Are the children fine? Did something... Mama, relax. Everyone's fine. I need to tell you something. And what is it? He took a deep breath. I've met someone. Silence, then. Praise God. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. David had to hold the phone away from his ear because Mama Gloria was screaming. Who is she? When do I meet her? Is she nice? Does she cook? Can she deal with your wahala? Mama, don't mama me. Tell me everything. It's Susan. Silence. Susan? Our Susan? The children's nanny Susan? Yes. More silence then. That is perfect. That girl is wonderful, kind, hardworking, loves your children, and she can cook. David, if you don't marry her, I will disown you. David laughed, full, genuine laughter. I haven't even asked her out yet, Mama. Then what are you doing on the phone with me? Go, ask her, today, now, this minute. Mama, go before she realizes she can do better and finds another man. That's not encouraging, but okay. I'm serious. You found a good woman who loves you and your children. That's a blessing. That's God's favor. Don't waste it. She paused. Your father, may his soul rest in peace, would have loved Susan. She has his spirit, strong, kind, doesn't take nonsense from anybody. David smiled. She really doesn't. So marry her. I want to plan a wedding. I want to buy Aso-Ebi. I want to dance. I'll see what I can do there. You'll do more than see. You'll do it today. And she hung up because Mama Gloria didn't believe in long goodbyes. Meanwhile, Susan was having her own crisis. She'd realized somewhere in the past 2 years that she had feelings for David. Inconvenient, complicated, terrifying feelings. The kind that made her heart race when he smiled. The kind that made her stomach flip when he said her name. The kind that made her ache when she thought about the fact that he was her employer and this was inappropriate and she should not be having these thoughts. But the heart doesn't care about appropriate. The heart wants what it wants, and hers wanted David Craig. She tried to ignore it, reminded herself that he was grieving, that he was her boss, that getting involved would complicate everything, that she'd probably just ruin the good thing they had, that she was being foolish. But then he'd laugh at one of her jokes and her heart would sing, or he'd bring her tea without being asked and she'd feel seen. Or he'd discuss books with her late at night, their heads bent together over pages, and she'd think, this, I want this, forever. One evening, Ngozi caught her staring at David through the window. He was in the garden with the triplets, teaching them about business, gesturing animatedly, making them laugh, being the father he'd fought so hard to become again. You like him, Ngozi said. It wasn't a question. Susan jumped, hand flying to her chest. What? No, Mommy. Ngozi gave her the look. The I'm 9, but I'm not stupid look. You stare at him, like a lot, the way people in movies stare at each other before they kiss. Susan's face went bright red. I do not, you do. And he stares at you the same way. It's actually kind of gross, but also really nice. Susan sat down heavily, covering her face with her hands. Oh God, is it that obvious? Very obvious. Even Kahindi noticed, and he's the least observant person I know. What do I do, baby? He's my employer. It's inappropriate. I could lose my job. We could lose our home. Or, Ngozi interrupted, you could tell him how you feel and maybe be happy. Susan looked at her daughter, this wise, beautiful, strong girl who'd survived so much. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, Mommy. You just raised me right. Susan laughed, pulling Ngozi into a hug. What if he doesn't feel the same way? Then he's an idiot, Ngozi said simply. But I don't think he's an idiot. I think he likes you. A lot. He just doesn't know how to say it. You really think so? I know so. The way he looks at you, Mommy, that's love. Even I can see it, and I'm 9. It was a Friday evening. The children had gone to a sleepover at one of the triplets' classmates, all 4 of them, because they refused to be separated even for one night. We're a package deal, Kehinde had announced to the confused parents, all 4 or none. Somehow the parents had agreed, possibly because saying no to 4 determined 9-year-olds felt dangerous. So David and Susan were alone in the house. Just the 2 of them. And Max the dog, but he didn't count because he was asleep and snoring like a freight train. Susan was in the backyard knitting. It was her safe space, the place she went when her thoughts were too loud and her heart was too confused. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold, making everything look like a painting. She was humming softly, trying to focus on the scarf she was making for Corady, trying not to think about her feelings, trying not to think about David. She was failing spectacularly. Susan! She jumped, nearly dropping her knitting needles. David stood in the doorway, leaning on his cane, looking nervous. Which was weird because David Craig didn't do nervous. David Craig did confident and successful and composed. But right now, he looked like a teenage boy about to ask a girl to prom. Mr. David, she set down her knitting, suddenly feeling like her heart was trying to escape her chest. I didn't hear you come out. Can I sit? Of course. He sat on the bench close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and warm that made her stomach flip. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind of silence that feels heavy with things unsaid. I need to tell you something, David said finally, his voice quiet. Susan's heart raced. Okay. I like you. The words hung in the air like a confession and a question and a hope rolled into one. Susan's breath caught. Her hands trembled. Her brain stopped working. What? Her voice came out as a whisper. I like you, David repeated, turning to look at her directly. More than I should. More than is probably appropriate. But I can't keep pretending. He took a shaky breath. You make me laugh, Susan. Real laughs, not fake ones. You challenge me. You push me to be better. You brought me back to life when I was ready to give up. His voice cracked. You saved my children. You saved me, and somewhere along the way I fell for you. Completely. Terrifyingly, absolutely. Susan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could barely process what she was hearing. Mr. David, he interrupted softly, just David, no titles, no formality, just David. His name felt different on her tongue, more intimate, more real. This is complicated. I know. I work for you. I know. People will talk. They'll say I'm a gold digger, that I seduced my employer, that I'm taking advantage. Let them talk, David said fiercely. I don't care what people think. I care about you, about us, about this family we've built. Susan's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared, she whispered. What if this ruins everything? What if it doesn't work out? What about the children? The children already love you, David said, and he was smiling now, a real smile, warm and genuine. I asked them. They gave their blessing. And actually, Kehinde told me I was behind schedule and needed to hurry up and marry you. Susan laughed through her tears. He did not. He absolutely did. He said, and I quote, "We're not talking about dating, Daddy. We're talking about marriage." That boy is too much. He gets it from his mother. She was also too much. In the best way. David reached for Susan's hand, held it gently. I'm not asking you to replace Amara. Nobody could. Nobody should. She was everything. And I'll always love her, always miss her. His voice got quieter. But she's gone. And I'm still here. And I think she'd want me to be happy, to live, to find love again. He looked at Susan with eyes that were so open, so vulnerable, so full of hope. And I found it. with you, if you'll have me, if you're willing to take a chance on a broken man with 3 chaotic children and a wig that snores like a construction site. Susan was full-on crying now, happy tears, relieved tears, the kind that come when you realize you're not alone in your feelings. "I like you too," she whispered, and saying it out loud felt like freedom. "I've liked you for so long, but I was terrified. I thought it was inappropriate. I thought you'd fire me. I thought—" David kissed her hand, cutting her off. "You're not just my employee, Susan. You're my friend, my partner, the person I want to see first thing in the morning and last thing at night." He smiled, that beautiful, genuine smile that made her heart melt. "You've been helping me heal, body, soul, and spirit. You brought my family back from the edge, and I just realized I don't want to lose you. I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to hide how I feel." "So what are you saying?" Susan asked, even though she knew, but she needed to hear it. "I'm saying," David took a breath, "let's try. Let's see where this goes. No pressure, no rush, just us together, building something real." Susan looked at him, at this man who'd fought through grief and pain to become whole again, at the father who'd learned to be present, at the human being who'd shown her that second chances were real, and she thought about the life they'd built together, messy and unconventional, but so full of love. "Okay," she whispered, "let's try." David's face lit up like someone had turned on the sun, and he kissed her hand again, like she was something precious, which to him, she was. David and Susan started dating, and it was adorable. Disgustingly, tooth-rottingly, make you want to vomit, but also smile adorable. The children thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever witnessed. David brought Susan flowers, not just any flowers. He researched her favorite flowers, sunflowers, because they're always happy, always facing the light, and brought them every week. The first time he did it, Susan cried. "They're just flowers," David said, looking panicked. "Why are you crying? Did I do something wrong?" "They're perfect," Susan sobbed. "Nobody's ever brought me flowers before. James tried once, but he bought roses from a roadside seller and they died in 2 hours. These are from the best florist in Lagos. They'll last at least a week. You're too good to me. Impossible. I could never be good enough." The children, watching from the doorway, made gagging noises. "This is disgusting," Kehinde announced. "But also cute," Ngozi added, "but mostly disgusting." Susan made David's favorite meals. She'd noticed over the 2 years what made his eyes light up. Pepper soup with goat meat, the spicy kind that cleared your sinuses and made you sweat. Pounded yam with a goosey soup so thick the swallow could stand. Jollof rice with perfectly fried plantain that was sweet and crispy and perfect. And for dessert, chin-chin that she made from scratch, because store-bought chin-chin was for people with no pride. David ate like a man who'd forgotten food could taste this good. "You're going to make me fat," he said, groaning happily as he finished his third help. "You need the weight," Susan shot back. "You were too thin when I met you, like a sad scarecrow in expensive pajamas." "I was grieving, and now you're healing. Eat your food." "Yes, ma'am," the children cackled. "Daddy is whipped," Kehinde announced. "I'm not whipped. I'm being polite." "You're whipped," all 4 children chorused. David sighed. "I'm surrounded by comedians. This is my life now." They watched movies together after the kids went to bed, sitting on the couch just a little too close. Not quite touching, but almost. The air between them electric with possibility. One night they were watching a romantic comedy, something light and funny that didn't require thinking. Susan laughed at a joke, and David found himself staring at her instead of the screen, at the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, at the way she threw her head back when she really laughed, at the way she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Why are you staring at me?" Susan asked, turning to look at him. Because you're beautiful. Susan's face went red. Stop it. I'm serious. You're beautiful, inside and out. You're just saying that because I made you pepper soup. I'm saying it because it's true. They stared at each other for a long moment. The movie forgotten. The world forgotten. Just the two of them, suspended in time. David leaned in. Susan leaned in. Their lips were inches apart. Ew! They jumped apart like they'd been electrocuted. All four children stood in the doorway in their pajamas, staring. What are you doing out of bed? Susan demanded, her face so red it could stop traffic. We heard talking, Kemi said innocently. We wanted to make sure everything was okay. You were about to kiss, Kahinda said, delighted. We almost saw our parents kiss. This is the best and worst day of my life. Go to bed, David shouted, but he was laughing. We're going! They scattered like roaches, giggling all the way up the stairs. David and Susan looked at each other and burst out laughing. We have no privacy, David said. We have 4 tiny spies. This is our life now. I wouldn't change it for anything. Susan taught David things he'd forgotten. How to be present in the moment instead of always thinking 3 steps ahead. How to laugh at small things, burnt toast, a dog chasing his tail, children arguing about nothing. How to find joy in ordinary moments, grocery shopping, folding laundry, sitting in comfortable silence. You're too serious, she'd say, poking his side while he worked on his laptop. I'm a businessman. Serious is my default setting. Well, change your settings. Life is too short to be serious all the time. She'd make him dance in the kitchen while she cooked. He had 2 left feet and the coordination of a baby giraffe learning to walk. But he tried, and she'd laugh, that bright, beautiful laugh that made everything better. And he'd think, this is what living feels like. David opened a business for Susan. Actually, not gave her a business. He was smarter than that. He invested. You've always wanted to do catering, he said one evening, pulling out a business plan he had written. So let's make it happen. Susan stared at the document. You wrote a business plan for my dream? Of course, you're brilliant, Susan. You have skills. Why waste them? But David, I can't let you just give me... I'm not giving you anything, he interrupted. I'm investing. We'll be partners. 60-40 split. You do the work, I provide capital and business connections. Sound fair? Susan's eyes filled with tears, again because apparently she was just a faucet now. You believe in me? Of course I believe in you. You're the woman who survived homelessness and came out stronger. You're unstoppable, he smiled. Besides, your jollof rice is legendary. People would pay for this. Might as well capitalize. And just like that, Susan's Kitchen was born. They started small, catering for birthday parties, small events, office lunches. But word spread fast, because Susan's food wasn't just good, it was exceptional. The kind that made people weep with joy. The kind that made them call their mothers and say, I found someone who cooks better than you. Sorry. Within 6 months, Susan's Kitchen was booming. Booked solid 3 months in advance, featured in food blogs, recommended by food critics who usually hated everything. Susan hired staff, other women who needed shoes, who needed chances, who needed someone to believe in them. She paid them well, treated them with respect, built a business on kindness and excellence. David was so proud he could burst. You're a mogul now, he teased one evening. I'm a caterer, Susan corrected. You're a CEO. Act like it. Fine, I'm a CEO who also makes excellent chin-chin, the best chin-chin. They'd been dating for 6 months when David decided. He wanted to marry her. Not someday, not eventually, now. Well, as soon as he could plan a proper proposal that wouldn't make him look like an idiot. He asked the children first, again, because apparently he needed their permission for everything now. If I proposed to Susan, what would you say? About time, they screamed in unison. It was eerie how synchronized they were. "Daddy, we've been waiting," Kemi said, exasperated. "We thought you'd never ask." "6 months is too long," Grady added. "You should have proposed months ago." "I wanted to make sure she was ready." "She's been ready," Ngozi interrupted. "She talks about you all the time. David said this, David did that. David is so wonderful. It's actually gross." "But also cute," Kehinde added quickly. "But mostly gross," David laughed. Okay, I get it. I'm behind schedule." "Very behind schedule," Kemi confirmed. "So what's the plan? How are you going to propose? Please tell me you're not doing something boring like hiding a ring in champagne, because people choke on those." "I hadn't thought that far." "Daddy, I just decided today." "We'll help you plan," Grady said, pulling out a notebook because, of course, he had a notebook. "We need romance, drama, something she'll remember forever." And thus began the most chaotic proposal planning session in history. Kehinde suggested skywriting. "Too expensive, and what if it's cloudy?" Grady vetoed. Kemi suggested a flash mob. "Mommy Susan hates being the center of attention. She'd die of embarrassment." Ngozi vetoed. Ngozi suggested a treasure hunt. "Too complicated. What if she gets lost?" Kehinde vetoed. They argued for hours. Finally, Grady said, "What about simple? Just Daddy and Miss Susan, dinner in the garden, fairy lights, candles, romance." Everyone stared at him. "That's actually perfect," Kemi said slowly. "Simple but meaningful," Kehinde agreed. "Daddy can't mess up something simple," Ngozi added. "Hey," David protested. "It's true, Daddy. You're good at business, not romance." Fair point. They spent the next week planning. The children were insufferable. "Daddy, did you buy the ring yet?" "Daddy, yeah. Did you practice what you're going to say?" "Daddy, are you going to cry? Because if you cry, we're all going to cry, and then it'll be a mess." David called Mama Gloria. "Mama, I'm proposing to Susan. It's finally. Praise Jesus. When?" "Saturday. The children are planning it." "The children?" "They're very involved." Mama Gloria cackled. "This is going to be wonderful or a disaster. Possibly both. Either way, I'm coming to Lagos for the wedding. Start planning. I want SOE by. I want to dance." "She hasn't said yes yet, Mama." "She'll say yes. That girl loves you. I have eyes." Saturday arrived. The children spent all day preparing. They decorated the garden with fairy lights. Hundreds of them, strung through trees and bushes and along the fence until the whole space looked magical. They set up candles in glass holders, safe candles that wouldn't start a fire and result in another smoke alarm incident. They arranged flowers, sunflowers obviously, because those were Susan's favorites. They set up a table with a white tablecloth, good china, wine glasses, for sparkling juice because the children were against alcohol after what happened at the gala. Kemi made a playlist of romantic songs. Not cheesy ones, Daddy, good ones. The ones that make you feel feelings. By 6 p.m., the garden looked like something out of a fairy tale. The children distracted Susan all day. "Miss Susan, can you help me with homework? Miss Susan, can you teach me that recipe? Miss Susan, can we go to the market?" Susan, bless her heart, had no idea what was happening. At 6:30 p.m., Kemi knocked on her door. "Miss Susan, Daddy wants to see you in the garden." "Now I'm in my work clothes." "You look perfect. Just come, please." Something in Kemi's voice made Susan's heart race. She followed Kemi downstairs, through the house, toward the back door, and gasped. The garden was transformed, fairy lights everywhere, twinkling like captured stars, candles glowing softly in the twilight, sunflowers arranged in beautiful clusters, and David standing by the table, wearing a suit, looking nervous and handsome and absolutely terrified. "David?" Susan's voice was barely a whisper. "What is all this?" "Sit," he said, his voice shaking. "Please, He sat across from her, hands trembling. I had a whole speech planned, he started. Corrady helped me write it. It was good, very romantic, very eloquent. He took a shaky breath. But I'm forgetting everything because you look so beautiful and I'm terrified and my heart is beating so fast I think it might explode. Susan laughed through sudden tears. David, let me try to remember. He closed his eyes, opened them. Susan, 6 months ago I told you I liked you, and you took a chance on a broken man with too much baggage and not enough sense. You have plenty of sense. I'm not finished, he said, but he was smiling. You've made me believe in second chances, in new beginnings, in love after loss. He stood up, wobbly on his cane, and walked around the table. Knelt down on one knee, slowly because his legs were still not perfect, but he did it. Pulled out a ring box from his pocket, opened it. The ring sparkled in the candlelight, a simple but beautiful diamond on a gold band. Susan's hands flew to her mouth. Susan Okafor, David said, his voice breaking. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Will you let me be Ngozi's father? Will you build this crazy, beautiful life with me? Susan was sobbing, full-on, ugly crying, the kind where you can't breathe and your face is a mess and you don't care. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, 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 1,000 times yes. David grinned, the biggest, most joyful grin she'd ever seen. He slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands, stood up carefully because his knee was screaming at him for kneeling, and kissed her. Actually properly kissed her. For the first time, in front of Gaman and the fairy lights and probably the children who were definitely spying. They're kissing, Kehinde's voice shrieked from the upstairs window. Ooh, came the chorus, but also yay. But mostly you. David and Susan broke apart laughing. We have an audience, Susan said. We always have an audience, David replied. This is our life now. I love our life. I love you. Susan's eyes filled with fresh tears. I love you too. The children came running down, all 4 of them, screaming. She said yes, we're getting a mom. I'm getting a dad. They dogpiled into a group hug. All 6 of them, 7 if you count Max, who came running, barking excitedly even though he had no idea what was happening. They laughed and cried and held each other like they were the only people in the world who mattered, which to each other, they were. Mama Gloria called 5 minutes later. She said yes, didn't she? How did you? I know things. I'm a grandmother. We have powers. Now let me talk to my future daughter-in-law. David handed the phone to Susan, who was still crying. Hello? Welcome to the family, my daughter. I'm buying an asoebi tomorrow. What's your favorite color? The wedding was 3 months later. Small but beautiful. Intimate but perfect. Mama Gloria cried through the entire ceremony. Like entire, from the moment she sat down to the moment they said I do to the reception. My son is getting married again. Praise Jesus. God is faithful. The pastor had to pause twice because she was crying so loud. Mama, please, David whispered. I can't help it. I'm happy. The triplets were groomsmen and bridesmaid. Corrady took his job very seriously, making sure everything was perfect. Kehinde made jokes the entire time to cover his nerves. Kemi cried beautiful tears and claimed she had something in her eye when anyone asked. Ngozi was the flower girl. She'd practiced walking slowly for 3 weeks. I practiced for 3 weeks, she announced to anyone who would listen. I can walk perfectly slow. Watch me. And she did. Walk down that aisle like she was in a pageant. Slow, graceful, perfect. Threw flower petals with the precision of a surgeon. The guests clapped. She bowed. It was magnificent. Susan wore a white dress, simple, elegant, beautiful, no long train, no excessive beading, just a simple, flowing dress that made her look like an angel. When David saw her walking down the aisle, he cried, full-on sobbed. I'm sorry, he choked out. She's just so beautiful. The pastor laughed. It's okay, my son. Let it out. During the vows, David's voice cracked. Susan, 2 years ago, I thought my story ended, but you showed me it was just the beginning of a new chapter. He took a shaky breath. You brought me back to life when I was ready to give up. You saved my children when they needed saving. You made our house a home again. Tears streamed down his face. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes to this broken man and his chaotic family. You're not broken, Susan whispered, crying too. You're healing, and I'm honored to be part of that journey. She smiled through her tears. David Craig, you and your children saved me when I had nothing. You gave me a home, a family, a future. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret hiring a homeless woman based on children's recommendation. The guests laughed through their tears. Best hiring decision I ever made, David said. They kissed. Everyone cheered. Mama Gloria screamed. The children made gagging noises but were also crying. It was perfect. At the reception, the children gave a speech. Corrady spoke first, adjusting his glasses like a tiny professor. 2 years ago, we hired a nanny without permission. Laughter from the guests. Kehinde continued, grinning. It was the best bad decision we ever made. Like terrible judgment. We could have been kidnapped, but we weren't. More laughter. Kemi finished, her voice strong. Because we didn't just get a nanny, we got a mom, and Ngozi got a date, and we all got proof that families aren't just born, they're built. From broken pieces, from hope, from love. She paused, looking at David and Susan. And we built something beautiful. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the photographer was crying. Ngozi added her part because she refused to be left out. Also, our family has the best food now, like really good food. That's important. You can't have a family without good jollof rice. That's just facts. Everyone laughed, but seriously, Ngozi continued, thank you, Daddy David, for giving me and my mommy a home when we had nothing. Thank you for making me your daughter. I promise to make you proud, and also to stop setting off the smoke alarm. Probably. David was sobbing. Susan was sobbing. The guests were sobbing. It was a mess, a beautiful, perfect mess. David and Susan decided not to have more children. 4 is perfect, Susan said firmly. Any more and we'd need a bus and a therapist and possibly bodyguards. And more smoke alarms, Kehinde added. We do not talk about the smoke alarms. They focused on raising their 4 children, running their businesses, loving each other loudly. The Craig mansion was never quiet again. There were football matches in the garden that got competitive to the point of violence, dance parties in the living room that lasted until midnight, Sunday family dinners that turned into debates about everything from politics to whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It doesn't, and Kehinde was wrong. There was laughter, so much laughter the walls probably got tired of it. There were arguments, because 4 children means chaos. There were tears, both happy and sad, because life is both. There was love, overwhelming, unconditional, fierce love. Mama Gloria visited every weekend without fail, spoiling everyone equally, bringing gifts, cooking massive meals, telling embarrassing stories about David's childhood. Did I tell you about the time David cried because he thought the moon was following him? Mama, no! He was 7 years old and he screamed, Mama, please! The children loved it. David wanted to die. Susan thought it was hilarious. Years later, when the children were older, teenagers actually, which was a whole different nightmare, they'd tell the story of how their family came together. It started with a peep through a gate, Ngozi would say, her voice dramatic, and ended with a wedding, Kemi would add, smiling. It was the best adventure ever, Corrady would conclude, adjusting his glasses like the wise elder he pretended to be. And we didn't even need a map, Kehinde would finish. Just kindness, stupidity, and a really good nanny. They'd all laugh. Laugh, because that's what families do. They laugh, they love. They survive the impossible, and they build something beautiful from the broken pieces. Sometimes late at night, when the house was finally quiet and the children were asleep, David and Susan would sit in the garden. The same garden where he'd proposed. The same garden where 4 children had become family. "Do you ever regret it?" David would ask. "Saying yes to those crazy children? To me?" "Never," Susan would say, taking his hand. "Not for a single second. You're my family, my home, my everything." Even when Kehinde sets off the smoke alarm, especially when Kehinde sets off the smoke alarm, it keeps life interesting. They'd sit in comfortable silence, hands clasped, hearts full. 2 people who'd lost everything, who'd been broken by tragedy, who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, who'd built a family from nothing, who'd learned that second chances are real, that love doesn't have an expiration date, that grief and joy can coexist, that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst circumstances. And if you listen closely on quiet nights, you could almost hear Amar's laughter in the wind. Not haunting, not sad, but joyful, proud, blessing this beautiful, chaotic, perfect family. Because love doesn't end. It transforms, it multiplies, it finds new ways to exist. And in the Craig mansion, love existed in abundance. Thank you for watching. Do you think 2 years is enough to move on from grieving the death of a partner? Do you think David should have grieved more? Or maybe wait for longer before dating again? What are your thoughts on this matter? Share them with me in the comments. Don't forget to show us some love by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. See you in the next one.